Alright, lads, welcome back to another episode of Who's Got the Ball. Shane always gets the giggles here when we start. If you're watching on YouTube, you just see the two of us like laughing at the start because it's always the same before we start recording. But we're back again, two of us here. Shane, what is the crack?
Um, can't complain, to be honest. I know I say that every single week, but I really can't. Um, it's kind of sad now that everything is coming to a close. All we've left now is League of Ireland, really. Munster are out, Leinster, we don't talk about them. They're probably going to win, I suppose. Yeah, I was down in Cove last week at the treaty match where the football got in the way of a really, really good day out in Cove. The Cove fans were sound, the bar after was great, but the match wasn't the
Yeah,
best result, but we move on.
lovely spot.
They even have their break now. Oh, unreal. Absolutely unreal, yeah.
Yeah,
But other than
actually,
that, all is quiet. Fun.
talking about League of Ireland, I said it to you already, but like when I was driving back to Carlow from Dublin last week, and driving down the N7 outside on Pucheen still. If you go to Dublin, like you'll know it, it's always the place that has all the flags outside of all the counties that are playing that weekend. Just like before you get into Dublin, and like Damien Duff there on the side of the road at the bus stop with a school bag on his back, looking up the road, just looking really pissed off, waiting for whatever bus was coming with the whole Shelbourne squad to travel down to Cork. It was funny, just not something I expected to see. But outside of that little League of Ireland bit, I suppose I was at the Leinster game last week, as you already alluded to. You just
Mm.
want to talk about, but they won, weren't great, just basically won. There's not much more to say about how they played because they barely got the job done. But I was kind of nervous at halftime when it started raining heavily because I thought, oh god, anything can happen when the ball is wet, especially if you don't have a comfortable lead. But they got over the line. Munster game was an absolute cracker. They were unfortunate. They kind of threw it away at the end, and it's unfortunate to lose in penalties in any sport, but especially rugby. It's just like I don't know. It just feels very harsh. But then this weekend, then I'm going to obviously the semi-final. Leinster are in now against Glasgow, and today, when you'll be listening to this, it is Friday. Ireland are playing Senegal. First time an African team, African
Mm.
country is playing in the Aviva. So I'm also going to that back-to-back days in the Aviva. So can't get enough of the place. Sure, only over the road for me now. But
Yeah,
how do you think
you're
Ireland will get on
living
in
the
that?
dream there now. They have to just go out there and win. To be perfectly honest, I don't think there's any beating around the bush on it. If with what Heimer is saying constantly about we're going to the World Cup, we're getting to
Mm,
this World Cup, book your flights. These are the kind of games where teams rock up and you just think you have to beat them. If you want people to
hmm
believe in what you're saying, they really do. You have to beat these teams, and just an all 2-0 or something would be really, really nice. Just something, get over the line, get
Yeah,
it done, and get out.
just in front of the home fans as well. It's just be so
Yeah,
important to get a
exactly.
nice
Yeah,
friendly win against a big team, a team who's won the African Cup of Nations not last time but the time
very
before.
recently.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty big. So hopefully they get a win. But yeah, I suppose moving on from that, the other thing that was on last weekend, which we obviously gave a big preview. I picked Inter to win. You picked PSG to win. Neither of us foresaw a 5-0 absolute drubbing. It was unbelievable by PSG the way they played. It was really a thing of Inter, their strategy to sign older players caught up with them at the end of the season
Mm.
when the going got tough, and then PSG's strategy of having a younger squad with a lot of legs and a lot of pressing really outdid Inter, in my opinion, and that just really killed them. But I didn't expect it to go like how it did.
I don't think anyone saw the result coming. Like I obviously I did pick PSG to win, but I said it'd be 2-1 or 2-0.
Yeah.
The way they tore him apart, Inter couldn't lay glove on him really. I think Donnarumma made maybe two saves of note in the whole game. Desiree Doué was sensational.
Oh my
What
god,
a player
unbelievable.
for 19 years old. Even I know it was an easy finish for Hakimi, but the pass for the first goal from Doué is just like he's picking that out and he's 19. And then his two
Yeah.
finishes were his second finish in particular was the finish of a man who's 29, not 19. They were
hmm
incredible. Their fullbacks are incredible. Dembele's pressing from the front. I think a lot of teams, and I think Liverpool are doing it now as well. I've said it a while, but I think Liverpool are trying to base what they're doing next year now on what PSG did this year. And you wouldn't be surprised to see many other teams kind of follow that mold as
hmm
well, maybe.
Yeah, Enrique, what a manager. I'm happier for him, to be honest, than I am for
Me as well,
PSG
yeah.
in general because of, I suppose, how they built the club with the money and stuff like that. But the
Mm.
football on the pitch, putting everything else aside, was superb. And I think, yeah, Enrique deserves all the credit in the world. But I suppose moving on to the big one then, NBA Finals. first game will be over by the time you listen to this, but we don't know how that's going to go because it's very late on Thursday night. We're getting this out for you Friday morning, so we're going to give basically a preview and then who we think is going to win without any knowledge of the games, and you'll only be one game ahead of us. So, do you want to start with maybe looking at the Pacers because I think we spent a lot of time on OKC last week.
Yeah,
What really stood out to you about them, and how do you think, how well do you think they did to get this far?
I think they've had an exceptional season. At no point of this year was I ever high on the Pacers. I really never saw them getting to this point. I had them. I think every single time we talked about the Pacers coming up against the Knicks or whoever else they come up against, I was backing against them. But the way Pascal Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton have just been off the charts, especially against the Knicks. I think outside of those two, then did like they're kind of the players that they kind of fit in around them have been really, really solid. Well, so the likes of Neesmith has kind of, I know he hasn't, he's had maybe one outstanding game, but the other games where he's just been kind of, he's been plugging a hole, filling a gap, and he's done it really, really well. Obviously, Nemhand has been a really, really good foil for Halliburton as well. And at the start of the year, I didn't see this coming from the Pacers at all. I really didn't see it. And the factor in the finals now, there's a whole lot about the way they've handled the season, the way they've come together at the right time. They made the Knicks look silly at times. And Jalen Brunson didn't get his own way too often either. I just think if they're going to do anything against OKC, now I don't think they will, but I've said that every single other round as well. So who knows? But I just think the way they handled Jalen Brunson for the four games they won was sensational.
Yeah, I think the performance from Nemhard in the last game was unbelievable. Like I think him and Neesmith playing so well on defense. I think like Nemhard found it very hard in the early games of this series, and then in that last game, the way he hit some timely shots and the way he defended Brunson, which he's never been able to do that. Like they put him on Brunson so many times and it didn't work, so they switched it to Neesmith, and
Mm.
Neesmith was great because he's more physical, but he picks up fouls early, and he was kind of injured. It looked like in the last couple of games he has that injury he's carrying. So for Nemhard to step up like that after having a bad series in general, it was just really incredible. I think Halliburton, it's his team, the way they play, they don't turn the ball over. 13.2 turnovers per game in the regular season, only behind OKC and the Celtics.
Mm.
That's down to 12.7 per game now in the playoffs. And then obviously the other side of things with the assists per game in regular season, 29.2. It's the third most in the league, and they have the most in the playoffs so far with 28.1. So the fact that you know, they can still hit maybe a higher height of what they had in the regular season with their assists shows something crazy of how Halliburton just dictates this team. They play the way he wants to play. I think he should have won Eastern Conference Finals MVP.
I agree.
He
Yeah,
is,
by the looks for I think he thought he should have won it as well. But the way
yeah,
he was almost walking up to collect it. I thought
yeah,
it was mad he didn't win it, and I think that's something that would really it's really going to spur him on going into these finals. He'd be like, "How on earth did I not win that? I really want to get the big one now. I want to get the Finals
yeah,
MVP." I
hmm,
couldn't believe he didn't win it, to be honest. But maybe it was kind of going off recency bias with it's Siakam scoring 31 in the final game as well might have
true.
tipped it in his favor.
Yeah, I think it does come down to stats a lot, and I think it's a lot about narrative too. Like with that vote where, Halliburton was rated as the most overrated player in the league by other players,
Mm,
but like they only polled a small number of players, and he got maybe like four votes. Another player got like three or whatever. So it's not like this is an overwhelming opinion, and that
yeah,
kind of feeds into things and the stat watching as well. I think of these voters, I don't think it should have been it should have went that way, but I think look, it's not egregious. It's not like Iguodala winning it over Steph that time. But
yeah,
it's still annoying for him. But I think you're right. He will use it to his advantage, and I think seeing him after the game, like telling Siakam to get a picture with the two trophies and everything, that was like he took it well. He took it in his stride, and I think in general, like I already mentioned, Nemhard and Neesmith, they're going to play very hard again on defense, but I don't think they're going to be able to match up with the Thunder in terms of strength and physicality because, yeah, they can match up with maybe Shea and wouldn't even go as far to say Jalen Williams. He's too big and strong, but they still won't be able to slow him down. They can match up in physicality. They can push him. They can do whatever, but he's still gonna be the smart player and do what he needs to do. And I just don't think they have enough to stop this historic Thunder run.
I don't think anyone has, with the way they played all season. I don't think anyone going into these finals, I'd be like, oh, I'm really confident they're going to be able to stop this team. Everything they've done in nearly every game all season has been just it's they've been off the charts all year long. Everything they do. Chet Holmgren has been incredible. Shea obviously has been incredible. Hartenstein has had a really, really solid year as well. I just don't see how anyone was going to stop him. And
Hmm.
especially now when they're in the finals, they have a lot to prove to themselves. And I think they're going to go out there and their bench depth, we mentioned it last week. They just have players that can come on and do bits for days
Yeah.
upon days upon days. And I hate being down on the Pacers again because they clearly deserve to be here, but I can't see them getting laying a glove on this OKC team really.
Do you think it's going to be a sweep, or what way do you have it?
No, I think I put down 4-2. And
Okay.
then the more I think about it, I think it's more likely to be a 4-1. They won't win
Hmm.
more than two games. Like we're not getting a game seven by any stretch of the imagination.
I
If it
don't think
does go
so.
to 4-2, if it goes to 4-2, then it's 3-1 and they want to get it back home. And the other ones they kind of dropped. They dropped one to the Timberwolves as well, where they just kind of don't show up one week. If it's going to be
Hmm.
a 4-1 or 4-2, then that's going to have to happen. Because if they're under a game for the first four games of these series, then it will be a sweep.
Yeah, I think it could. I think it's going to be a 4-1. I think they'll get it maybe 3-0. And they'll lose one there, maybe
Mm.
a 2-0, and they might lose the first one in Indiana if Indiana really push it, and then the Thunder will be like, we need to close this back out at home. But I think they'll close it out in OKC again with a 4-1. But I think Indiana are very good. It's just the OKC team that is there right now is literally historic. This will be like, people are not rating this team properly, I don't think, still, because like this is going to be one of the best teams we will witness in a long time and have witnessed in a long time in terms of their dominance. If they win this whole thing out, they'll have the third most wins in a season between regular season and playoffs combined ever. So only behind the 15-16 Warriors who had 88 and the 95-96 Bulls who had 87. They'll
Mm.
be tied with the 96-97 Bulls with 84. And just looking at those teams, so I was looking at all the teams who had the most wins ever in like the top 10 in that category, combining regular season and playoffs. And if OKC managed to reach it in there, they have the most points per game out of all the other top 10 with 119.9. Only the Warriors are second with 116.5 in
Mad.
2016-17. They have the most steals out of all the other top 10 teams. 1019. The Warriors are like 80 behind. That was that same Warriors team. And then a really interesting one is they will have the least field goals or free throws attempted out of all those other top 10 teams. So maybe Shea gets to the line a lot, but they don't need that to win because it shows how well they've done with this elite defense, stealing the ball, scoring at will, and they will be one of the most historic, well performing teams I think in the history of the NBA if they do win this, and I do think they will. I think I think SGA is going to be. I just can't see anybody else winning it, and I think he'll just dominate this. He'll get to his spot. He'll do what he needs to do as usual.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think he's going to have the time of his life in these 4 or 5 games, and he's going to walk away with the MVP. Maybe buy myself and yourself a Rolex this time, so he's really got the rest of the team one. And yeah, he's just going to peel away into the sunshine. And we said a couple of weeks back that this is definitely the start of a dynasty in OKC because it's a young team. The contracts aren't mad yet, and obviously they'll go up, but the way they play, they're all young. They're going to be a really, really exciting team to watch for the next 3 to 5 seasons.
Yeah, I think they have like the ability to take this forward for at least 5 seasons, as you said, and with the age of these guys, it could be for longer, depending on how long Shea holds up and injury luck and things like that. But everything would point towards this working out in the long run. It's a roster building just perfect. It's a clinic of roster building, similar to what Howie Roseman has done with the Eagles. I think moving on then to one little topic that just happened in the NBA, I suppose, just to quickly touch on it. We've both gone with OKC to win 4-1 there, but then looking at another side of things is a bit obviously positive in OKC and Indiana, and then negative in New York. Well, depending on what way you look at it, Tom Thibodeau was fired. I said to you straight away I wasn't surprised by this. What was your first take from seeing that he was fired?
But as I said to you when he went, I was like, is that a bit mad? And you kind of explained to me why it wasn't. And I looked into it more and I was like, oh yeah, it actually does make sense. It was 3 years in a row. They were conference semi-final losers 2 years in a row, and then conference final losers this year. And he just
Hmm.
hasn't been able to get them over the line. And it probably was time for a fresh face in there because they were so poor against the Pacers. And after taking the Boston Celtics apart, you thought, oh, they're
Yeah,
probably they're going all the way this year. Well, not all the way, but they're going to the finals this year. And then the Pacers just walked all over them, and I'd be really surprised at how badly they performed across that series. And then I saw he was fired. It's like, okay, it's not just us that actually thought they were performing really poorly. His record in the playoffs is nothing great. And here is 48 wins, 55 losses. You probably need someone who has the other way around, maybe 55-48 coach coming in who has one more games he's lost in the playoffs that kind of might get him over the line a bit because they have a talented squad there that it
yeah,
could very well have given OKC a better game than the Pacers might.
yeah,
But it depends who they bring in now because that's going to be absolutely massive.
yeah. I think that there's like a number of things that played into it, and I think his inability to rotate the team in the regular season was the biggest one. Like, why are you only starting to rotate in Landry Shamet and DeLon Wright in the last few games of the Pacers series when that should have been done a lot earlier in the season? There was games where they're up like 25 in a blowout win and Jalen Brunson is still on the floor with like 2 minutes left in the game in the regular season. We're not talking about playoffs. Like this, these are things that it's quite obvious that the coach is not doing things correctly here. There was reports obviously coming out now about other players being unhappy with Cat's ability to defend and reading the system. That ultimately comes back on the coach. That was from the Athletic, and then more coming out now about Rick Brunson possibly people being unhappy with his input, and that's from Hoopswire. So I'm not sure, obviously, how how many sources this is from. I know the Athletic like triple check their sources. I'm not sure about the Hoopswire one. I can't speak to that, but I think the Athletic report about Cat definitely falls back on the coach. That comes out the day after they get eliminated. But what he did there was really good. He turned the team around. He literally did like what he was brought in to do. He set a better culture. The players work harder than when he was there, but than when he took over. They were increased their winning percentage. They reached four of the last five playoffs, and they
Mm.
didn't have a playoff appearance in 7 years before that. So he took them to the next level, but it's like now they can't get over that point with him and the way he does things. They now need somebody maybe more offensively minded because they've gone all in on the players, so they're going to need to change the coach. And I think
Yeah,
it was the right thing to do. Obviously, he'll be disappointed, but I think they did it at the right time and they did the right thing. But it'll
it's
definitely be
good.
one to watch.
Yeah, it's good that they've done it so early into the off season as well. Like the way the Nuggets fired their coach before the season was over, like
Hmm.
that's the wrong time to do it. But when you've just been eliminated, this now gives the new coach basically a whole off season to get his message across, get any free agents in that he might want to pick up instead of like you see a lot of teams just leave it, leave it, leave it, and then they've left it too late to bring in a new
Yeah,
coach and nothing changes. At least they've been proactive on it, and I think that will stand them in good stead as well once they get
yeah,
the appointment right.
yeah. No, I agree with you on that. I think that's a big one. We're gonna be watching that over the off season,
Hmm.
and who comes in and what they do going forward. But yeah, that was the stories around the NBA. Let's jump into the NFL. So lads, jumping into the NFL portion, we've got myself and Shane. I've got our buddy Evan on, big Cowboys fan, and we're gonna do a little preview. He's got the CD top going. I'm sure we're gonna give him a
Rock,
mention.
rocking the CD, boys. CD.
So you're gonna need to jump onto YouTube to watch this because you're gonna have to see Evan's CD top that he's got on him. But what we're gonna do is we're doing like a season preview. Since we obviously only do like weekly episodes, we're gonna do our season preview kind of starting now per team, and then I suppose we'll do a bigger episode with like our predictions and stuff at the start before the season starts. But we want to give equal time to each team in the NFL. So this week we're starting with Cowboys and Eagles, starting in the NFC East since Evan is on deck. Um, we've got like 4 questions we're going to answer for each team. So we'll get started with the Cowboys and we'll throw the first question to Evan on this one. You guys will pick up the questions as you go, but the first one that we kind of looked at for every team is where do you need to improve the most from last season? So what do you think of for this?
Thank you very much for having me on. Much appreciated. Yeah, for those that don't see, we are rocking CD Lamb t-shirt today. So do give the YouTubes a gander. But yeah, we do have a couple of things that we need to work on from last season. And what I thought of specifically is it's got to be stopping the run for sure,
Mm.
100%. We have to be able to keep the average rushing yards per game down significantly in comparison to last year. We were getting run over even by teams that we probably shouldn't have been run over by. Now, that's a tough one to do. Stopping the run, obviously, depending on what schemes and all that good stuff. But specifically, I targeted someone who really needs to step up major, and I think it's got to be the defensive tackle Mazzy Smith.
Yeah,
Last year he had a relatively poor season in comparison to where we thought we'd be with him being able to stop the run. So if he can in fact go ahead and get that being able to get in there, stop the run, that would be absolutely massive. I mean, we specifically picked him up from Michigan for that purpose. That was the
yeah,
whole goal there. And if he's not being able to perform up to the level to be able to hold it off, it's going to open up. Obviously, you see their teams are pushing the run. It's being successful. We're heavily focusing on it then, and then they're then countering with a deep pass or whatever it might be. It's
yeah,
opening us up for those key passes as well. So if we can at least eliminate that, it would be massive for our
yeah.
defense.
I think games are won and lost in the trenches on either side of the ball. That's why I definitely agree with you. It was a toss up for me between improving your rushing offense or defense, and I just went with the offensive side because sixth worst in the league with just under 105 yards per game was pretty poor last year. Shane, did you have anything different for that?
I went just with what you were saying as well, with they really needed to improve the offensive running of the ball. And that's
Yeah.
why they brought in Miles Sanders, they brought in Javante Williams in the hope that at least one of them could do something. And the rookie, Jaden Blue as well, is
Hmm.
hopefully make a big impact for it too. I
Yeah.
think like it's very easy to keep throwing to CD Lamb, but as everyone just said, like it's so like if you when they know what they're doing, it's so easy to just stop CD run and you seem to stop the Dallas Cowboys. So if they can get their running game going at all, it would make such a
Hmm.
massive difference for them, I think.
Yeah. That's kind of leads into the next question, which is the 3 players on their team that will make the biggest impact. And 2 of the guys you mentioned there, I had them down. So I had CD. I just think he's the best player on the team, and he's probably going to get even more yards if Pickens has any sort of kind of input. So that's going to free him up a little bit. I also put Jaden Blue. I think it's really important that he hits the ground running. Texas have had a lot of good running backs enter the NFL over the last few seasons, and I'm willing to think that he's a good one. The third guy that I've picked out then is Donovan Izaraku. I think that was an unbelievable pick in the draft from Boston College. 16.5 sacks last year with Boston College in 12 games. And if you have Micah on the other side, it's only going to make life easier for you. So I think those 3 were the guys I picked out. Did you guys have anybody different or overlapping with me?
I'll always look back to Trayvon Diggs because I have such high hopes for him. I always have high hopes for him. I always will. I don't know if he really does have it in him, but I think he's a really good, solid cornerback. And if he can get back to the kind of levels he showed 2 years ago, then he could be one that's commanding big money when his new contract comes to pass. But I don't know, maybe he's kind of hit his ceiling. We'll see. But I really
Hmm.
like him. And there's one on a personal level. I really hope that Rivaldo Fairweather does well, just because I think his name is absolutely
Just
class.
love the
And
name.
yeah, he's an undrafted tight end who they picked up. And again, I always look at tight ends and think, can you be a Travis Kelsey? Can you be someone like Dallas Goddard? And I really hope he's the one that makes the jump this year, outside of obviously the ones that the Jets have picked up.
Ev, did you
I
have
was
anybody
gonna
different?
Yeah, look, aside from going with the regular names that we see come through for Cowboys, we got Lamb, we got Parsons. One that I think could be massive, Turpin. I think
Mm,
Mm.
Turpin could be a pretty big potential wide receiver three. That
yeah,
whole wide receiver three battle now is a very interesting one. I mean, he got the extension, which was massive. The new contract role in there for him, which was huge. Special teams return specialist, that's massive. We saw
yeah.
him absolutely break the commander's ankles off what appears to be like a muff punt return, and he just brought us to the house for a touchdown. That was insane. Whether or not he did that, would that have guaranteed his new contract? Who knows? But
It's tough.
I think we can definitely put Turpin up there anyway for an interesting wide receiver three
Mhm,
spot and potential impact player. Yeah, the running back situation, the running back room is huge. There's a lot of
Mm.
names in there. Jaden Blue obviously is huge, and also I think his interesting rookie counterpart is
mm,
Mafa, who got pulled
mhm.
in from I believe it was Clemson. I think he is an absolute truck. So if they're struggling with the running back room, I think they got a lot of options there for like a good 1-2 punch combo. That would be sick.
Mhm,
And the other person, my other impact, could potentially be Bland.
Mm.
I mean,
mm.
Bland had
Yeah,
a massive record-setting year. Literally put him in the history books for pick six. I think was it six in the season?
5, I think it was.
Five.
yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever he
Being
had
able
back
to,
to back was like, I think the most, um, as well in like a run. It was
yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah. With him having a touch and go injury there and being out for a couple of weeks, that's unfortunate. Hopefully, with him coming back, that would be huge for the defensive side. And yeah, I think that's my
Yeah,
three covered really.
nice.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
had nine interceptions for 209 yards and 5 touchdowns.
it's
Insane,
crazy.
like. Yeah.
And most
Huge, huge
most
production.
interception returns for a touchdown, and most interceptions in a single season. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
that was an
Yeah,
absolute monster season. You'd love to see it.
yeah. I think then moving into our last two questions, they kind of go together because the first one is, do we think they'll hit their over under wins with the bookies this year? So they're projected to have 7.5 wins. So it's either over or under that. And then the second question part of that is, what is their ceiling with the current roster and coach for the season ahead? Not to look too far into the future, but just the season ahead. So Shane, what did you get for these two?
I think they'll go over on wins, but not by much. I think maybe 8. I don't think they're only going to win 6 or 7, and I think they'll get to the playoffs, but they'll be one of the first teams knocked out when they do get to playoffs. I think. I just don't think with Dak Prescott still in there commanding that money, I just don't see how anything changes up there really, unless now their running backs go off and Bland keeps going as he was. I don't see him pushing too far into the playoffs this year.
Okay, what do you have for this?
I honestly think this is an absolute steal for the better. I think if you're a Cowboys fan, you go ham here. We're going over 7.5, without a doubt. I know that the schedule it does look a bit tough, right? I think we got some easy losses. First game against the Eagles is brutal. However, last season our first game was against Browns, and I had us written off of that game, and we smashed them at in Cleveland. So that was a big dub for us. So do I think we're going to beat the Eagles? No. But looking at the schedule, I think that's an easy 9 to 10 win season for sure.
Ooh, okay, so I've gone. You guys have gone. Evan obviously gone a bit higher. Shane's gone in the middle. I've gone lower. I just think the schedule is way too tough. It's just so hard this year. Playing in the best division in football, pretty much with the Commanders and Eagles there, and then you also have to play the AFC West and the NFC North. It's going to be so hard, and I'm just not willing to put them higher than 7 wins with the fact that I think they'll hit a similar level to last year because I'm really not sure about the coaching hire.
Hmm.
And although I see a future with some of the young guys they have there, this is kind of looking at the ceiling for next year. I've just kind of gone with, I think, at a ceiling, I think 9 wins this year. If some games swing their way, but I don't think they make the playoffs. But That's kind of I do think they will go under, but at a push, I think the most they could get is 9. But it's just with the schedule. If things flipped another way, it could be different. But it's so tough. Um, so I suppose that's us wrapped up our 4 questions on the Cowboys. Our second team that we're going to touch on then is Super Bowl champion Eagles. It's a bit of a different outlook, although they have a very similar schedule in toughness. They're obviously a team that just won the Super Bowl, so the outlook is going to be a little bit different. What I've said about where do they need to improve for last year, I just said nowhere. They're the Super Bowl champs. Their defense was absolutely amazing, and I think although the offense could improve in certain places, it is already ramping into that direction. So I don't see any real issues. Did you guys highlight anything? I'll throw it to you first, Ev.
Yeah, you're right. Like that team is absolutely stacked from front to back, top to bottom, both sides of the ball. They're churning, and they're a tough one. They're easily up there. I wouldn't be shocked to see them in the Super Bowl. I wouldn't. The only thing that I suppose was the loss of Mekhi Becton going to the Chargers, I believe. Solid ass guard. What an absolute stud he is. And
Huge,
I
massive.
mean, he's a big boy, and like, yeah, that's a big loss. Huge game for the Chargers. It's not like a massive loss though for the Eagles. They do have a lot of depth to fill the
Yeah,
guard spot. I think that's so overcomable, but like still,
yeah,
it's unfortunate to see him leave. He was a great pass blocker, and he was an excellent run blocker as well. Give the likes of Saquon the extra room that he needed to get in and out, slip in and out, and get those yards.
yeah, yeah. No, definitely, that's a good point. Ev or Shane, what you got for this one?
There's very little to kind of, you really can't pick holes in them, as you both said already. They brought in a new backup running back in AJ Dillon, which I think is a massive pickup as well. So
Hmm.
even if they were weak in running back last year because they only had Saquon, they're not weak now. Their wide receivers, Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, Dallas Goddard there as their tight ends. They just have so many options, and Evan has just gone in depth on the defense as well. Like it's so hard to pick any holes, and it wouldn't be a surprise to see them go back to back. It really wouldn't. Their head coach as well is quite clearly very, very good at what he does, even if people don't like him.
Hmm.
He's a menace of a man, but he's a brilliant head coach.
Yeah, yeah.
Or
No,
there's
it's hard to argue with that. So, yeah, a lot of people have conflicting opinions about him. Whether we've mentioned it before, like whether he's actually running everything or not is something that is maybe left up to
Mm,
interpretation. But we'll see now. After he has done plenty of times, he's lost coordinators, and I think losing Kellen Moore is probably a big one. But I think I'd be more concerned if he lost Fangio on the other side of the ball. He kind of really dictates the way this defense is played. So I think moving into what 3 players on their team will make the biggest impact. I looked at some defensive players and what Fangio can do with them, really, because I think Jihad Campbell slipping in the draft in the first round, like I had him ranked top 10. I thought he would be excellent out of Alabama, linebacker, and he just slipped perfectly to them, as players tend to do. They just draft best available because they already have a great roster, and it works so well. And looking at what Fangio did with Zach Bond last year, I think he can only improve Campbell's game. I've also gone with Quinion Mitchell just because I think some of the wide receivers in this division with CD, Malik Neighbors, Terry McLaurin, he'll need to have a huge season if they're going to continue to be good on defense, and he'll need to match what he did last year. And the last guy I had then is obviously maybe an obvious one, but I think Jalen Hurts is only going to get better because he had a lot of critics, I think, over the years. And the way he bounced back from the previous Super Bowl loss to how he performed in this year's one was absolutely amazing. And I think he's going to be really a leader for this team and up there pushing an MVP consideration. What did you have for this, Evan?
Yeah, I agree. Like all of those players, there's too many impact players to
Yeah.
pick on both sides of the ball. It's insane. Yeah, if Jalen, I mean, like playoff Jalen is something else as well. When he gets to the playoffs specifically, he just shreds and puts up great numbers. You love to see it. Or well, not so much we don't.
No, we don't.
But it's good to see him though, and like that past criticisms and all that good stuff. Overcoming that is obviously a mental challenge in itself, and stepping up, getting it done, and moving on
Mm.
is huge, and he's able to do that. yeah, AJ Brown, absolute stud. What a receiver. And I think his impact is only going to continue on into next year, or this year, sorry, which is going to, yeah, it's going to seal them the Super Bowl, surely. I'd be stunned if they didn't get there. And then another person that I thought is massive is Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
What an absolute warrior on the defensive side of the ball. I believe even in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, he was just locking it down consistently, play after
Hmm.
play. I don't think they sent more than their front four at the Chiefs. I could be
No, they
wrong.
don't
I
need
don't
to.
think they.
They
I
didn't.
don't. Think they, yeah,
They
they didn't
never
need
do.
to. The boys just held it down, and yeah, he's a huge key piece of the puzzle on the defensive side. I think for getting it done.
Yeah, definitely. He's only going to get better as well with how young he is. And
Mhm.
Shane, did you have anybody different there than we mentioned?
Yeah, so there was a rookie last year. He only started one game, but he played across 18, I think it was, or 16, sorry. And it's Jalix Hunt.
You
Um,
like his name too?
21 tackles. I know. I actually think like if they're looking for something big this year, he was a third round pick last year, and if they can kind of slot him in as a linebacker this year, kind of could just be another one that they picked up, let him settle for a year, and then just throw him in now and see what he does. Alongside the obvious one, they decided G.I. Campbell's a great pickup. They have Cooper DeJean and what he did last year. And then the offensive weapons, we don't need to go too much into them again. I just think they just have talent all over the place. It's so hard to narrow it down to three that aren't like
Yeah,
it's instead of just saying Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, AJ, Devontae, Dallas, whoever you want. Like you just
yeah,
have to sit back and admire like the way they built the squad over the last couple of years.
yeah. Their roster building is unbelievable. Like, and it's like with Saquon, you don't even have to go into detail. We just know what he's done. It's yeah, he's obviously going to be the most impactful if he's on the pitch. But I think thinking
Mm.
outside the box, we get into some other names. But yeah, Jalix Hunt is an interesting one, and they're lucky to have that luxury to like have a guy that you drafted in the third round. He doesn't have to play an overwhelming amount of minutes, and then he has a Super Bowl ring and he's ready to go year
Mm.
two. So yeah, that's a very interesting one. But then the last two questions, obviously, their over under is 11.5, and then looking at their ceiling. I'll go first this time. I think 11.5 wins is a lot, but I think they can hit 12 at least coming off the back of the Super Bowl high. I think there's no reason why they won't exceed 11.5 wins. I think that's the most that any team has. I think that at that mark there around there with the Bills and maybe the Lions, a couple of other teams. But yeah, I think they'll definitely overcome that margin. And I think their ceiling is a Super Bowl back to back. I think it's obvious to say because they've just won it, but I think most of the best parts of the roster are intact. Obviously, you lost a couple of pieces on defense, and obviously, you've mentioned already on the offensive side of the ball, a big loss in Becton, but I think they have enough to overcome that. I think their offense is always improving, so I think yeah, back to back Super Bowls is the ceiling here. What do you think, Shane?
Yeah, I agree. They are going over 11 and a half, I think, as well. I think they'll hit 12 or 13, and then they'll get to Super Bowl, and if they get to Super Bowl, I think they win it again. I can see them going back to back, and it's very hard to bet against them really as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think 12 is absolutely doable by the squad in its current state. I think as well the ceiling, 100%, it's Super Bowl bound, I think. Obviously, unless something absolutely nuts was to happen, I think that's the goal. I like Nick Sirianni just knows what's going on. He knows what to do. Last season they had a rough start. Pretty sure they pulled a couple of losses early, and
mm,
off rip the fan base is get Sirianni out. Well, look where you
yeah,
ended up. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So
I think if it
I
wasn't
think
for
so.
that
Yeah,
big Goddard run in that game, I don't know who their Jaguars maybe, and he took or the Saints, and he took it like with like 1 minute left, 4th and 1,
Mm.
way down the pitch, and then the season turned from there. So
yeah,
yeah, they were
yeah,
big Sirianni out until that point.
yeah. I think fan bases will do that. The mentality will shift very quick. And but as did the Eagles, their mentality shifted fast. And once they got into dub after dub after dub, the growth kept going. And yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, I think Sirianni is a pivotal character either way, because some people will come out and say now that he could, you know, take this and have too much confidence, but I don't think so. I actually think this might tone him down a little bit because he has the win now and he has nothing to prove. He's one of the best winning records in the history of the NFL. Obviously, small sample size, but I think he will take this in his stride. But yeah, that's it. That's the first two teams previewed. We're obviously going to hit them all as the season goes by. Thank you for coming on, Ev, and joining us. We hope to see you again. If you want to plug anything, I know you do Twitch from time to time, so if you want to plug that or your Instagram for the guys.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you both very much for having me on. I appreciate it. I know we jump in on just Cowboys there and a bit of the Eagles, but I'm happy to come back for another epi if that's down the line I'm in. This is a bit of
Yes,
crack.
sir.
Yeah, some of my socials for a bit of streaming. I'm only kind of getting back into it now recently enough, but typically any of my socials are just whatever it is /Hypox. That's HYPOXX, just Hypox. But yeah, thank you
Nice one.
both for having me on, and I appreciate it.
Love it,
Cheers,
bro.
Ev. Thanks very much.
Thanks for joining us.
Anytime.
All right, lads, let's move on. So we have a bit of a different one now that the power rankings are done. We used to do them at the end of the show. We've moved in a new kind of game for the summer where each week we're going to do like a draft. We're going to do like a snake style draft where one of us will go first, the other person gets 2 picks, and then back 2 picks, and so on. And we've picked like different topics to go over, so just kind of fun things to draft as the season goes on. You can let us know if there's anybody you think we missed out on in each of these topics. So the first one is most underrated players in the Premier League. So we're going to draft 5 people each. Obviously, we can't take the same people. So I'll do a little spin the wheel, see who goes first this time, and then we'll just swap it then next week and go forth from there. But it's kind of even enough when it's only 2 people. It's like because we're gonna do like a snake style, so it's not the worst. But let me just enter this in: James, Shane, and spin. You guys can't see this, so
What
this
is
is terrible
good?
podcasting. But here we go. Shane, you won. You're going first, bud. Off you go
Okay.
to the races.
I'm going to start with probably and probably an easy enough pick. I think Johan Vissa doesn't get enough credit at Brentford. No?
Absolutely. Yes. Perfect pick, bro. He was my
Yeah.
first one.
So he did 19 goals in 35 games this season. And I think the reason he doesn't get talked about so much is because he's 28 now, going on 29. He's probably not getting the move that Brian Bueno's getting or the other players on the team are getting. But I think he is so solid for them. 19 goals from the player who no one talks about is
Hmm.
outrageous, if you ask me, to be perfectly honest. I think he was the most obvious pick in this
Yeah.
draft.
No, he's definitely the most obvious pick. I wanted him first, so I'm going to move on then to my 2 and 3, which are Strand Larson is my guy I'm going to go with. I think he's very underrated for how good he's already performed and how good he will perform into the future. 14 goals and 4 assists last season. He's not very young, as we touched on previously. We went over and looked at him when we were talking about Wolves, but I think he is still a lot of growing to do in the game, and he's the proper physical profile for it. And then my second pick is Nathan Collins. I think he's an incredibly underrated player. Obviously, Ireland's captain, the only outfield player in the Premier League who played every minute of last season. Incredible talent. Obviously, probably a bit of Irish bias, but I do think he's a very good player who should be playing close to the Champions League level because he has all the ability in the world with his passing and reading of the game. So they're my 1 and 2.
Yeah, he was my second pick, to be honest, Nathan Collins. The 38 games, every minute played, and Brentford had a really, really good season, and he was pivotal to it.
Yeah,
So he was up there for me. Do I pick two now? I do. So
yeah, good.
I'm going to go with Alex Iwobi from Fulham.
Oh, nice,
15 goals
nice.
and assists across the season this year. He can play in a range of positions, but he was mostly playing centre mid, and he ran himself into the ground in
Mm,
so many games last season that he was literally limping off the pitch after 70 minutes after putting his heart and soul into the game of football. And
yeah,
Fulham kind of reaped the benefit of this season. I think they fell off a bit at the end, but they had a really, really good season as well. And there's so many teams in the middle of that table now who are kind of they're probably pushing top eight, and even if they don't get there, they have players that will be starting in many other leagues. They have players that will be starting in the likes of La
yeah,
Liga and stuff. And I think Alex Iwobi will be starting for a Premier League team, or sorry, yeah, a Champions League team if he was playing in Germany or France or somewhere.
yeah. I
And
couldn't
other
agree
than
more with
that,
that.
I'm going to, yeah. And then I'm going to go for Ilya
Here we go.
Zabari. from Brentford, or sorry, from
Yeah,
Bournemouth.
Bournemouth.
This is third season now at Bournemouth, and he is really, really good. I gave Dean Huijsen all the credit last year because I was hoping he'd
Hmm.
listen and go to Liverpool. But Ilias Sabari is such a solid centre half as well, and I think they'll do really well to hold on to him this summer.
Yeah, incredible box defender.
Mm.
Good height. Yeah, I think they need to hold on to him after losing Huijsen, definitely. So then I've gone with a goalkeeper then for my next pick. I've gone with Matt Sells. I think he's a real like floor raiser for any team that has him. And I think the way he plays for Forest in big moments, some of the saves he makes, he's 13 clean sheets last season, the joint most in the league. Obviously, that's down to the defense too, but he makes a large majority of his saves. He has a high percentage of saves, and he's good for penalties too. So I think he's underrated. And then next, I've gone with Jared Bowen. I think 13 goals and 8 assists last season in a very poor West Ham team. He's the proper consistent guy that they have that they can always rely on. I think they're lucky to have him with his talent. He can make a goal out of nothing. He was pivotal for them winning a European trophy just a couple of seasons back. So I think he's very underrated for his ability. Last two for you.
Yeah, I've also I kind of picked it as a five-a-side team as well, so I have a goalkeeper and another centre mid to come in.
Okay.
I've gone with I was going to go with Dean Henderson, but then he won a trophy, so like he's probably not as underrated as I think he is. I've actually gone for Kepa as my goalkeeper. I think he had a really, really
Oh,
good
nice.
season at Bournemouth. Joe, he was laughed out of Chelsea. Couldn't wait to get rid of him. And if he was at Chelsea this year, they'd have been a far better team, I think, because Robert Sanchez is rubbish, and we've said it all along. I think Kepa's a better keeper than him.
Yeah.
He's going to be sold this season. I wouldn't be surprised if Bournemouth do pick him up, or if he does end up back at a top team in Spain.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's a world beater by any stretch of the imagination. I just think the year he had, he deserves a bit of a mention. And then João Gomez at Wolves.
Mhm.
Himself and Andre are both incredible for the level they're playing at. They should both be looking at moves to European clubs this season. Thiago Gomez is so good, such a good passer, such a good blocker, such a good defensive midfielder. And he slots into my five-a-side team lovely.
Yeah, that's a nice makeup. I think, yeah, I might as well go for something similar then to make it a kind of a five-a-side team. I'm going to go with Tyler Adams. I think incredibly underrated player, pivotal to that Bournemouth team, like captain in his country, the USA. I think what age was he? 23, something like that.
Yeah.
A real leader. He was brilliant at Leeds, and the step up to Bournemouth, obviously unfortunate with the injuries he suffered, really set him back. But since he's come back in, he's been so good, breaking up the play. Fifth most successful tackles per 90 in the league with 2.3. A real kind of jewel winner and a good passer as well. So I think he's very underrated in that team. So I've got Strand Larson, Nathan Collins, Matt Sells, Jared Bowen, and Tyler Adams. And
Mhm.
then you've got Wissa, Iwobi, Zabarni, Kepa, and Gomez. So let us know if there's anybody else you thought we missed out on, lads. Those are our five most underrated players each draft for the Premier League. So moving into football then, we've got something similar to what you just heard for the NFL. We're going to do this leading up to the start of next season. Obviously, we'll do a bigger kind of predictions and preview before the season starts, but we're going to do like a preview for each of the teams before the season gets underway. So we're going to go with basically the team who finished the best last season and the team who was worse off. But in this case, it's Sunderland because they qualified through the playoffs. So we're going to do Liverpool and Sunderland. We're going to answer 4 questions on each, and we're going to do that for all the Premier League teams so they all get covered before the season starts. So we'll start with Liverpool. The first question is, where do they need to improve most from last season? Obviously, as a resident Liverpool fan, I'll throw it to you first, Shane.
So there was very little here to kind of pick apart, a bit like when we were talking about the Eagles, but the one thing that came down to me for me was they need to improve their set piece goals. Um, they only got 16 set piece goals, including penalties last season. It was the same as Southampton, Leicester, Ipswich, and Fulham.
Wow.
Imagine if you can add a couple more goals to what they already had, you'd be adding maybe 8 to 10 points for next season and put them back up to a 90-point team. Clearly, like scoring goals wasn't their issue. They scored
Mm-hmm.
two plus in 31 of the 38 games, a new Premier League record. They conceded 41, but nine of those came after the league was won. So it was 32 up until the final four games of the season. So, like, that's probably easy to stamp out as well. I just want them to do more from set pieces. And Alexis McAllister seemed to be kind of getting his head around having to kick a ball from the corner flag towards the end of the season. There was a couple there from Van Dijk towards the end of the season. So hopefully they have looked at it. But that was the one that really annoyed me all season was if Liverpool were taking a corner, I could go and make a cup of tea or coffee because I knew they weren't scoring from it. Like you come back to.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting stat, and it's interesting to see them lower than United because United are shocking at set pieces
Mm,
too. But my one was just the depth of squad and their ability to rotate in certain positions was the biggest one.
yeah.
I think when you get into more competitions, you need to have better rotation ability, and the likes of Shimikas coming off the bench, these kind of guys like getting minutes when you might need a good solid replacement, and especially when you lose certain players too, you're going to need to replace them with good talent. And I think they're already starting to address that. That was the biggest one for me. I think the second question we got then was like, who are the three players on the team that'll make the biggest impact? Similar kind of question to looking at the NFL. So what I've gone with is one new signing, in Frimpong. I think his ability will really make a huge impact on this team. I think he'll translate into the Premier League with his ability. Like the number of goals and assists may not be the same as what he was getting for Leverkusen. It's a different system,
Mm.
but his skill level, his pace, his ability to cross will just be nothing but a benefit for this Liverpool team. And then the other two I've gone with are guys who were already brilliant, and I think they'll continue to grow. Is McAllister and Gravenberch. I just think for McAllister, I really love watching him play. I've said to you many times, his talent is unbelievable, and I think he'll grow more and more confident in this system. Obviously with a new manager and Gravenberch playing a whole new position last year, I think he can only get better after how well he did this last time around. So I think he'll make a huge impact too.
Yeah, so like outside of the obvious ones, 'cause it's so easy to sit here and say, "Oh, Salah, Virgil, Allison." Like,
Yeah,
but people know that themselves. People don't need to listen to us talking for 10 minutes to find out that Salah, Virgil, and Allison are the most impactful players on the team.
yeah,
I think you've hit the nail on the head with the three you picked there. I think Gravenberch and McAllister in particular they are going to get better. They're going to just keep getting fitter. And McAllister in particular is going to get fitter. Gravenberch is going to get more confidence. I think Szoboszlai next year is going to be key. I think if Florian Wirtz does come in, Szoboszlai is probably going to drop deeper and maybe rotate in and out a bit more with McAllister or Gravenberch. And I think that's a role that will suit him better than the more attacking one he had this season, bar maybe 4 weeks where he was on fire. I think
hmm
over the course of the season, he was more making blocks and tackles than he was being the last man making a run into the box. And I think that's where Verts, if he signs, will come in. I'm going
yeah,
to put Verts in there as my second man because I really everything points to it. Even his Instagram post saying I didn't ask for the number 10 shares. It kind of all the signs points to the fact that he is probably signing for Liverpool now. I think he's going to be an exceptional bit of business, and I'm just so excited to watch him play in a Liverpool shirt. Everyone was on Florian Wirtz watch last night, and he
mm,
stamped on Bruno Fernandes and scored a goal. Everyone was delighted. So hopefully he brings that to the Premier League with him. And my third one, then I'm going to go with Ibu Kanate. If he's looking for this massive contract he wants and he's hoping to get it, he needs to be doing what Van Dijk is doing. He needs to be able to lead the back line when Van Dijk's not playing beside him because he did. We played the Chelsea game. Van Dijk didn't start. It was Quanta and Kanate, and Quanta was like the more senior defender. Kanate just shrunk into a shell of himself. And if he wants this 250 grand a week or whatever he's looking for 6 years, he needs to be able to be the man you can rely on when Virgil does go in 2 or 3 years' time. So he's one to keep an eye on this season as well.
no, fair enough. I like those ones. Um, I think there's a number of players you could really point out in this system. I think the way Slot has approached things, I think he'll only make more and more players more impactful, to be honest. But I think that leads in to the next question of what do you think the ceiling is of this team with the current manager and squad, obviously for the season ahead. For me, I've said for looking at ceiling, I think the ceiling is to win another title. I'm not sure they will, but like I think sometimes things can go a bit more difficult in a sophomore season in across any sport. It is difficult to replicate, your first season success. But I think unless City like really turn things around and things don't go right for them with their case that's in obviously the courts at the moment, I don't really know which other team would push fully based on last season. I don't know if Arsenal have it in them without a good number of signings. So I think I'm going to say win another title is the ceiling. Prediction wise, I'll leave that till closer to the season starts, but I think they definitely have that ability.
Yeah, I put down that my ceiling is really pushing hard for the Champions League this year, as well as trying to go back to back on the title. I think you made a great point a while ago about the squad depth. If they can really develop that squad depth, if they had squad depth this year, they could have won the Champions League and probably the Carabao Cup and topped the league title. And I know no one did a treble. Like it's not easy to go and do a treble,
Mm,
but it was there from with a bit more depth. And if they can bring that in, then I don't see why they can't push further in the Champions League next year, as well as kind of keep up the standard they had in the Premier League. Again, as you said, we're not going to do our Premier League prediction just yet, but I really hope that they can be in the conversation again come next March or April if they're still in with a shout. In both competitions, I'll be very, very happy.
yeah, no, that's. I think how well they did this season, it's hard to argue with that. I think then the last question we're going to touch on for the soccer teams are what one piece of business do they need to do to help them this season? So what did you put down for this? I feel we have a similar answer.
Well, I've kind of skipped over the ones I think are done. So
Yeah, me
Frimpong,
too.
Wirtz, and Kirkes, I haven't looked at.
No, me
It's
neither.
obviously a
I'll,
striker.
yeah, that's what
It's
I got
obviously
too.
a striker they need. And when it came to names, I don't know enough about Ekitike to throw him out there as a definite option.
Mm,
Benjamin Sesko looks like he's going to Arsenal. I kind of said that I'd rather a good kind of forward option, someone like a Turkey or Rodrigo from Real Madrid, but I couldn't nail down one answer. If they are going for
mm,
striker, I think it will be Ekitike, and I think it will be very late in the summer because they're not going to pay the 80 to 100 million that Frankfurt are asking, unless Chelsea go and do it now because they're
mm.
stupid. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, Chelsea would be willing to pay anything for anybody. Seems
Yeah,
well, apart from Sancho, but they were willing to pay five
yeah.
million to get rid of him. So my one piece of business was also a striker. I didn't give like a solid name, just some options I thought would work. I said Oshiman would be an interesting one, although it'd be expensive. Gyökeres, I think, would be a really, really good one. Although I don't know how interested Liverpool are in him. I think he's an unbelievable striker, and he's shown the physical levels I think to be capable of Premier League. And then another one I said which would be expensive, but an option like a Wissa, who is like a goal scorer, or like a Mateta, somebody like that who can really contribute to the team consistently and can play in multiple different competitions with, your likes of Verts or Salah or Diaz playing off him.
Yeah.
I think that would work, but that was my suggestions.
Yeah, I saw a talk on Twitter last night of I can't remember his name now. The striker that started for Germany last night, the 6'6" fella, and I wouldn't want him.
Okay,
Oh,
why not?
he was just like he's like Darwin Núñez 2.0, only taller. I'd love Gyökeres. I think he'd be a great bit of business, but as you said, there's no real talk about him. And maybe
Yeah.
now we'll get to the point where Liverpool are keeping it quiet, hoping his
Mm,
name kind of falls off everyone's radar. Chelsea go sign Ekitike, Arsenal bring in Sesko, and then they're like, oh, we've a free run at Gyökeres, and we get him for
hmm
whatever. Then there's no bidding war. That could be the move, and they might be waiting as well to make sure they can get rid of Darwin Núñez too before they do
Yeah.
go and look and see what they get for him. And if they get 60 plus million, just turn around to Sporting and say, here, we got this, you can have us. Here's
Yeah.
Benfica's money.
Yeah. I think that might work. I think he would definitely be someone that a top Premier League team should really look for. But the
Surely, yeah.
guy's name was Nick Voltemada. Stuttgart striker. Not going to pretend like I know much about him, but yeah, big
Six
big
foot
lanky
six is
fella.
all I know. Yeah.
Yeah,
And his
but
touch
yeah.
was horrific all night.
Oh, here we go. Another, yeah, exactly copy of Nunes there. But
Yeah.
I think moving in then to the opposite end of the spectrum, Liverpool on top of the world after winning the Prem last year. Obviously, Sunderland on top of the world too, just winning the Championship playoff final. But they are on a whole different level of skill than Liverpool, so the conversation might be a little bit different here. For me, with what they need to improve on the most from last season, I've gone with goal scoring. If you look at the top six of the championship last year, they had the lowest amount of goals scored amongst the top six with only 58. They've got some young strikers up front. Their options are kind of limited. And although I do think looking at Mayenda, he was pretty good towards the end of the season and he stepped up in the playoffs. I think that's a position that they struggle with and they're going to need to add more goals if they have a hope of staying up. What did you have for that?
Look, I didn't really pick out any one position. I just said that the consistency is going to be key for him. I know
Mm,
that's such a simple thing to say, but they were so consistent nearly all season until obviously the last 5 games where they kind of just packed in the championship season and like they knew they were in
yeah,
the playoffs. If they can keep a level of consistency where they're even at 1.2 or 1.3 points per game, that will keep them in the league. And if they can just do that across the season with a couple of signs, then I think they'll be okay. I don't fancy them to stay up, but I think they might have the best chance of the three that are coming up to do it. They've the biggest stadium, biggest fan base. We'll see. I
yeah,
really
no,
like the manager.
yeah. I think I don't know. We'll move on anyway. We'll talk about their ceiling later, but
Yeah, yeah.
I think, what do you think about the three players on their team that will make the biggest impact? Who do you think?
So your man Enzo Lefebvre, who they've just signed permanently from Roma, I think is a really, really good player to watch. His
Mm,
numbers were nothing special. He only had 1 goal and 1 assist from January on last year, but like he really passed the eye test for me. Every time I saw him play, he was just involved in everything. I think he was brought down for the penalties, the games where they missed the two penalties. I think it was him that missed them, but I'm pretty sure he also won them.
mm,
He's lightning. He's just a really, really solid player, and I think he's only going to get better, especially after kind of settling for 6 months in England. And now we've gone up a division now, but he's really,
yeah,
really good. And Patrick Roberts for me, I've always liked him from his time at Celtic, where he was really good. He had 2 goals and 7 assists in the Championship last season. It's kind of like you can't come up to the league and do what Forest did and buy 28 new players and hope for the best. So you are going to need to keep a couple of these championship players in around your squad as well. And I think
yeah.
he's a really solid option to keep in around. He's a good dribbler, good passer. His pass for the goal in the playoff final was exceptional as well. His vision is clearly all there. So he's starting to coming into his own now as well. He's 28 as well. So he needs to kind of, it's now or never for him in the Premier League. So I think he's going to be key for him next season. And finally, I've Luke O'Nien.
Yeah,
He was a bit of a laughing stock when that documentary came out, Sunderland Till I Die. But I think he was their captain for the season just gone. He
yeah.
only missed 2 goals in the championship all season from, sorry, 2 games all season from and scored 3 goals. I think he's a really solid player, and he's one that if they were to bring in a Jordan Henderson or something to sit him in beside Luke O'Nien, I think he'd only get better.
I think, yeah, I had him as well. I think his experience with them, being with the club since 2018, playing very well on the defensive side of the ball, and kind of whether he's like a long term option for them or not, begs like that. That's not the real point here. It's kind of the fact that he's been at the club for so long. He did perform in the lower levels. He might not be up to the level of the Premier League long term, but I think it's still
Yeah,
important to keep him there because of his experience with the team. I think he's only 30 years of age, so he's not exactly like
30
close
this
to
year, yeah.
retirement or anything like that. So, like, I think he has good experience. He's a solid player in the lower leagues. Let's see if he can take the step up. I still think he'll be important around the team. Second, I've gone with Troy Hume. I think he was very good at right back for them. He has a good ability to attack and provide goals and assists, and he's a very good defender. He likes to get stuck in. So I think his game is one that translates over to the Premier League. I know a lot of people looking at Dennis Cirkin, especially with the surrounding talk about maybe he could play for Ireland, things like that. He's a big topic. But I think Hume on the other side was very impressive. I think he will translate to the Premier League. And then last was Mayenda. I mentioned him already, but I think having 10 goals and 5 assists in his first full season with the first team at 20 years of age is not anything to kind of turn away at. I think he did well, although he wasn't very consistent. I still think he stepped up in the big moments, scoring in the championship playoff semi final, scoring in the final. These are big moments for a 20-year-old, and I think he'll only use that to his advantage stepping up to the Premier League. So I think with their current squad, those are the players that I think they'll make the biggest impact. Kind of keeping that in mind, then our last question, or our second last question, is about their ceiling. What's the ceiling with the current manager and squad this season? I've gone with the ceiling for them is to finish 17th. I don't think they can get any higher than just one spot above
Yeah.
the relegation zone. That's if they recruit very smartly. But I think without a proper striker, I think their ceiling is going to be 18th because I don't think they'll score enough goals. But if they do get someone in, I think they can just about stay up, but that's at a very big push. But again, I'll make my proper prediction on that later on in the summer. What have you got with that?
Yeah, I agree with you. Their aim just has to be staying in the league. Regis Debris is a good manager. I do like him. He had a 45% win ratio in the championship last year. If they could bring that over, they'd be looking at European places. Obviously, they're not going to keep that kind of level of winning up, but I think he knows a good player, and I think he'll get in some really top players from the summer. We'll see, but I think the highest they're going to get is 17th as well, and they're more likely to be 18th or 19th for me too. I can't see any of the three teams that are coming up staying up, but we'll see.
It's going to be quite difficult. I think. Last question then. What piece of one piece of business do you think would really help them this season?
Obviously, a striker is the easy one to go for, but I've actually gone for a goalkeeper. I don't like Anthony Patterson. I know he kept 14 clean sheets. He only had one error leading to a goal last season. That's nothing to be sniffed at, but that's a championship level. I think they
Hmm.
need someone really, really commanding when they come up to this division. Obviously, I don't want them to sign Aaron Ramsdale because that's his kind of MO of going to teams that come up. I think I've heard that Barcelona are signing Yaman Garcia from
Yeah.
Espanyol and loaning him out. I think if they got him in for a year on loan, I think that'd be a great bit of business. It might be completely unrealistic. I might be living in a fantasy land,
Hmm.
but if they're looking to Barcelona are looking for him to play football where he's going to face a lot of shots and have to kind of pick passes out over a kind of a tight defense. Now, the more I
Yeah.
talk about it, the less sense it makes because Barcelona play at a completely different level. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
I think
still.
he'd be a good goalkeeper from.
Yeah, no, it makes. I can't see that happening, but it makes sense. Like that kind of
No,
logic. Somebody he faces a lot of saves. He will face a lot of shots. So, but yeah, I think that's interesting. I've obviously gone with a more obvious one, and a striker or attacking midfielder that can be reliable. I don't have any exact names in mind because I feel like they'll find it very difficult to attract players at a Premier League level already. The guys who've gone down, that's the typical thing. They just got relegated, so I don't think they should be looking there either. I think they'll have to look in different leagues. And I think if they recruit smartly in other leagues with players that can reliably give you, 10, 12 goals, 5, 6 assists, maybe a few more assists if you're playing deeper, that is what they need at this level because it's very, very important. And I think their defense is probably stronger than their attack. And they have two good fullbacks there. So maybe someone who's a bit bigger and can nod in a few headers. But that's
absolutely.
definitely for me the most important. So that's your Liverpool and Sunderland kind of look ahead to the next season. Next week will be on Man City and Burnley, and because Arsenal and Burnley, because Arsenal were second and Burnley came up in second place in the Championship. So that's one to look ahead to. I suppose then just to wrap up, as we mentioned last week, we're going to look at transfers, the main ones that have come up in the last week. Just a quick chat about them before we end the episode. So, what ones kind of stuck out to you over this last week?
The big one actually for me, obviously being a Liverpool fan, came out today, and it was Luis Diaz's comments in his interview before the Colombia. Where is he from again? Is he?
Colombia.
Yeah, his comment before the Colombia game, where he said, "I'm very happy at Liverpool. They've treated me well since the first day. We're talking with other clubs. It's the transfer window. It's normal. If Liverpool renews my contract, I have to say the 2 years I've left, I'll be happy, but it's up to them." Very strange for a player to come out and say his representatives are talking to other clubs, especially when the talk is that Liverpool just turned down Barcelona's advanced stay as well. I think
Hmm.
he's the kind of player that Liverpool are going to sell if the price is ridiculous. They're not going to sell him on the cheap, and they'll put out he's not for sale until someone offers 80 or 85 million. Like, oh yeah, he's very much for sale. So I think that's a big one to keep an eye on over the course of summer. I
Hmm.
think what Man City are doing is really, really smart, and it makes me kind of scared about him again. If they get in Cherky and Reinders before
Hmm.
the Club World Cups that they're in and they're settled, I think that's absolutely massive, and I think that would be great business from.
Yeah, I think those are the two big ones with City. Obviously, Reinders, €55 million fixed fee plus bonuses, and he's going to sign a 5-year contract. And then Turkey, at the moment, it's expected that City are going to make a bid for him very, very soon. Another one then is Eight Nouri for
Yeah,
them. They need to reach an agreement with Wolves, but it looks like all parties are expecting to reach a move, according to David Ornstein, 23-year-old. I can't believe he's so young, to be honest. I thought he's been around for a
Yeah.
lot longer than that. But, City doing business early. One could point to, they're trying to cover their bases before their case hits the fan. But that's for another day, I suppose, to talk about that. Then a couple of other ones that stood out to me, obviously, as a United fan. Brian Mbumo, we talked about him earlier in the season. He had a really big breakout season this year, with his 20 goals, and he had a good number of assists. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but that that looks to be something that he's decided he wants to go to United, according to Ornstein. Still 25 years of age. I think he fits in perfectly playing as that right 10 if Cunha's the left 10. It makes a bit more sense now, that you could play Xerxes up front if he is going to link play. Obviously, we still need another striker, but it doesn't put us in that position where you need to go and spend crazy money on a striker right now. Just build the other positions of need, like backup wing back, and a good defensive midfielder. I think as the window progresses and you sell other bodies, getting these two in, adding Premier League experienced guys that can score goals, I think is very good. First bid of £45 million plus £10 million in add-ons was rejected. I think Brentford are looking closer to what
Obviously.
United paid for Cunha. Obviously, you have to start
Yeah.
low, but I think it seems some of the talk today is that they'd be willing to accept if there was like 50 to 55 million guaranteed, and then whatever add-ons. Because obviously we don't know what those add-ons were. They could have been something silly just as a way to open up the bidding. But hopefully that continues because I think he wants to go to United now. So that should push on and get done, which I'm delighted about. And then a very last one, Caoimhin Kelleher leaving your Liverpool. I think
Mm.
that's massive. £18 million, great deal for Brentford for a top keeper after they just sold Flecken for I think 11 million to
11
buy
million.
Leverkusen.
Yeah, 11 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think £18 million is the max that they'll pay for Kelleher. I think this is a massive deal. What did you make of it?
I think I'm delighted for him, to be honest.
Yeah.
He has, every time he's stood in, he has never put a foot wrong. He's
Yeah.
never let Liverpool down in any match, which is really, really impressive for kind of like a second choice keeper is always coming in cold. Even if
Hmm.
he is playing 8 or 10 games in a row, like he never knows which of those 10 games is going to be his last one for the whole year.
Yeah.
So the fact he came in, he was always reliable. Most penalty saves and most shootout wins
Yes.
as a goalkeeper in Liverpool's
So
history is madness.
it's brilliant.
Well, he's been exceptional. And the most disappointing thing is that they've only gotten 12.5 million for him because I thought they'd get double that, to be
Mm.
honest. I know
Yeah.
it's the contract situation. If they'd sold him last summer, they probably would have gotten double it. But
Yeah.
we got another year out of him. He got another Premier League. He played 10 Premier League games, so he made an impact, and he leaves with everyone in Liverpool's best wishes, I'm pretty sure, because I think he was
Yeah.
absolutely incredible for the club.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm looking at it from the outside, and then I think really smart from Brentford because get 11 million for Flecken, who was great, but then you're only paying extra 1.5 million for an incredible young keeper who,
Yeah,
he's clearly Ireland's number one in a position that we're actually quite strong in. So I'm very happy with that as well, and great for I think it was Ring Mahan, his team in Cork, who had
yeah,
a 20% add-on or 20% sell-on clause. Sorry,
Salah,
so
yeah.
they get like what 3 million or something.
3 million up front, and it can only rise then as well, yeah.
It's absolutely
Mad.
amazing for a small team in Ireland to
Um,
get something
the,
like that.
yeah, the thing for me as well is that like last year, not the season gone now, the season before, I thought Mark Flecknam was one of the worst goalkeepers in the league. I really did. I didn't rate him at all highly. I think he was a bit better
Hmm,
this year, but I think they've upgraded their goalkeeper massively, getting
I
Keller
think
in
so.
here and getting 11 million for him as well. Now we'll see how Keller does with his first year of being an actual first choice goalkeeper. It kind
Hmm,
of comes with different pressures to what he was doing the last couple of years. But I think if he keeps playing the way he has been playing, then Brentford have gotten an absolute steal for a player they could sell in 2 years for double or triple that.
yeah, I think so. I think it works perfectly for them, especially having Collins there as their captain or like their kind of
Yeah,
captain figure in
on the
defence.
pitch captain. Yeah,
Yeah, so I think, yeah, I think that's a smart move for them to be honest, and I think I don't really think it can go wrong. I think Flecken is more of a ball player, and but I think Kelleher still has those skills too. So yeah, that's
absolutely.
pretty much the transfer roundup for this week. We'll come back again next week with whatever is done in the next week or whatever's on the way to being done. That's it for the episode, lads. Got a good bit of breakdown for the season ahead, and we'll continue in this fashion going forward. Obviously, next week we will be very close to having an NBA Finals winner, so we'll talk about what's gone on between now and then, and we'll break down the next two teams in the NFL and the Premier League leading into next season. But appreciate you all for listening. If you made it this far, leave a like, subscribe on whatever you're listening on. Give us a follow on socials. I'll throw it to you, Shane, to wrap it up.
Thanks so much, lads. As James has said, like this is episode 21 now, and I can't believe how long it's going, and it's kind of how easy it's been for us to kind of settle into it and just we love doing it. We love giving it out to you. And if you do like it, just as you said, like, comment, subscribe, share it
Yeah,
if you would as well. That would be brilliant. And just keep listening because we are only going to get better. Thank you very much.
nice one, lads. Chat to you next week.